Hello, and welcome to EURAXESS Smart Talks.
The Smart Talks podcast series is an EU-funded EURAXESS project, which provides information and assistance to researchers at any career stage.
EURAXESS supports the European research area in its ambition to create a single, borderless market for research, innovation, and technology across the EU.
We support researchers in mobility, careers within and beyond academia, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
We strive to enhance scientific collaboration between Europe and the world.
Hi, our focus today is on EURAXESS China. We are happy to welcome our experts that are Halldor Berg, representative of EURAXESS China, Lena Kaufmann, researchers on China-EU relationships, and Slaven Misljencevic Policy Officer, Directorate-General for Research and Innovation. Let's explore not only China-EU relationships, but also people that make things happen. We are happy to welcome Halldor Berg, who is international relations professional with focus on science diplomacy and EU-China relations. With masters in international relations from Bejing University and B.A. in politics, philosophy and economics from Bifrost University, he speaks English, Icelandic, Chinese, French, and Danish. Welcome, Halldor.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, both of you, Leah and Daria.
Thank you. So what is the history behind EURAXESS China, and when and why was it created?
So EURAXESS China is part of the EURAXESS Worldwide Initiative, which is an initiative of the DTRTT, Research and Innovation of the European Commission. And it was set up in China originally, I think, in 2009 or so. Like it was quite early. So the EURAXESS Worldwide Initiative was set up originally a little bit to sort of connect European researchers in places like North America better with the European research area. The idea was that there were like all of these European talents all over the academic world, all over the world, who could serve as sort of bridges or links between the Europe and like these research heavy hubs around the world. And the first one was in North America in framework program. Well, I think it was 6 or 7, and little bit later, like 2 or 3 years later, there was one opened here in China. So the idea originally was very much this: to connect these European researchers that are all over the world, not necessarily to get them to come back to Europe, but more to sort of give them inform them about what was going on in like these research framework programs that the European Union is running, like Horizon Europe, and make sure that well, I think the thinking was like this: like if the European researchers are not aware of the global dimension of a program like Horizon, how could we even expect local researchers in other places to know anything? So it was sort of a foot in the door idea. Then later on, after these hubs were set up, the focus switched a little bit, and we included also like the local researchers. And here in China, it's like all these Chinese researchers that we sort of wanted to introduce the idea of the European research area. This includes just like the research funding of Horizon, the mobility opportunities of Marie Curie, grants like European Research Council, but also just like the idea of European research area as a whole. Like it's a thing that exists beyond just the European Union. It includes when you're a Chinese researcher and you're really well embedded into the Chinese research system or whatever, you might understand the value of collaborating with Europe, with a European country or an institution in Europe. But what you might not understand is that Europe as a whole is like is a thing. Is integrated in scientifically, and you can cooperate with many different European countries at the same time, because that's like the idea behind the European research area. So we also promote member states opportunities and multilateral schemes and other things like this. So like there's a lot of things that we do in that sense. We had a guy named Jacques who was in charge of EURAXESS China Hub for a while, and then later he was replaced by a woman named Andrea Stratsko. And I started working with her at the China Hub in 2015, which is 9 years ago, I think, like in April. And I took over the project in 2017, and I've been sort of following it since then. And it's a very interesting project because while the mission is very clear, and on a high level, it's very clear sort of what European Commission and the European Union wants out of this, it's not always very clear how you would achieve this in a specific hub around the world. So in China, we had to find our own ways to sort of engage with the Chinese research system, which is very unique and is very different from how it works in a lot of other places. The big emphasis here in China that has been sort of my main focus while have been doing this job has been on trying to create like a real active community of researchers. It is the mandate of EURAXESS to do such a thing, but it's not really explained how that works and what that actually means. But I wanted it to be something more than just a list of researchers, like our mailing list or something like that. I wanted it to be a real community of people. I wanted it to exist beyond just our interaction with it. I wanted these people to know each other. I wanted them to interact with each other. I wanted them to sort of like organize themselves. I wanted it to be a lot of bottom-up things that came around and so on. And the big sort of organizational point that we decided to take to be able to do that was to create like a sort of clusters of smaller groups of researchers that had something in common. And we are running about 30 of them right now. So we have we set up, for example, the first sort of group of German researchers in China, and we helped the establishment of the Holland Science Network, like these member states initiatives. We also created we now have 5 big groups with about, I guess 2,000 people in it, which are like Marie Curie researchers here in China, where we set up like this sort of community of people that supports each other and helps each other to apply for Marie Curie. You do all these events with them, etc. Just to name a few. We also created like these networks of European researchers that are here in China. These people are very sort of crucial to our outreach here because China is very much sort of a black box to a lot of European institutions. They don't really know how to engage with them. But these European researchers that are here are the people that I believe knows the Chinese scientific system the best. And we are really keen on sort of supporting them and helping them. We think it's a really good idea that like we have a lot of these people here inside of China. And we also want to make sure that we can elevate the knowledge about like Chinese science and research on every level in Europe by sort of taking by working with these people. So that's been like really interesting. Now we have like these very active networks, and we have these online forums and things like that where all these people are interacting on daily basis. So that is sort of the history of EURAXESS China, let's say, in a nutshell.
How many hubs do you have? Covering these topics, or is it just you?
You mean like thematic hubs, or you mean like worldwide
Yes.
hubs, or what sort of hubs do you mean?
No, in China that are operating, that are engaging all these 200 people that you know.
Yeah. So we have about 8,000 people in our network, and we run them through like about 30 to 35 different sort of sub networks that we are like where we engage with them. And we only have one physical hub, like our office here in Beijing, which has been here since the beginning. But we are still 2 people working on the project as like main EURAXESS officers. Besides me, we also have Anna Facchinetti, who is actually based in Italy at the moment. But the 2 of us are sort of like the EURAXESS China hub officers for now. And overall, though, geographically, our focus has been sort of trying to make sure that we can reach out to all different parts of China. Because as it turns out, Chinese research system is really quite widespread geographically. There's a lot of research activity happening here in Beijing. But there's also Shanghai is also very significant when it comes to attracting researchers from all over the world, and has like big institutions. So we try to do things in both of these cities on a very regular basis. We do networking events in both of these places, etc. And since 2019, I've always tried to do at least a couple of events in Guangzhou every year to sort of cover the south of China. Guangzhou is also a really significant producer of scientific knowledge in the world and has a lot of European researchers and really great institutions and Chinese researchers. And we're trying our best to also engage with them, although they are pretty far away from Beijing, in the sense that it's a little bit like going from Norway to south of Spain or something. It's very different places, but we try to cover it as well as we can from here. Beside this, we go to at least 10 different locations around China every year. Just recently, I was going through places that we do not go so many times. We went to the province of Hunan, to Changsha. We went to the Jiangxi province, where we went to the city of Nanchang, like places that might not be super familiar to the Western audience, but has like huge institutions with hundreds of thousands of researchers and scientists, etc., often very actively involved in international collaboration.
One time zone still for the whole China. Very convenient.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So that leads us right into our next question for you, which is if you could tell us about the China and European community of researchers and scientists. How much collaboration is there between China and the European research area, both from Chinese researchers and also from European researchers?
Well, the scope of China-Europe collaboration is very big, and like the number of co-publications and joint research projects, etc., over the years is like just one of the number one in the whole world, excluding maybe US, Europe. If you just like look at it as a whole, because like when we're talking about significant research areas in the world in terms of producing science, we're talking about the United States, we're talking about Europe, we're talking about China, and China is obviously the newcomer, etc. So there's a lot of things going on, but it happens on. It's a pretty like unlike maybe international collaboration inside Europe. It's happens on a lot more political level between China and Europe. That's just the nature of how the relationship is. We are looking at quite a bit of independent bilateral institutional collaboration between different European institutions in China. There within, there's quite a bit of it that also goes through research funding of the European Union, like Horizon. For example, in Horizon 2020, we had, I think, between 500 and 600 cases of Chinese participation in Horizon projects. It's quite a bit. It's quite a lot. And some of the big Chinese universities are really big in this kind of collaboration. We also do look at all kinds of other sort of joint research structures that exist. For example, this morning I was organizing an event called Workshop on Joint Research Structures in China, where we were looking at European and Chinese research structures, how many there were. And currently the situation is not super good. There's probably been a little bit of dwindling in the numbers there, but the last time we did this mapping before a couple of years before COVID, we had about 170 joint laboratories and stuff like that between China and Europe. So it's significant. It's quite a bit. And we still have huge collaborations going through, like in France, the CNRS has like many, like in France in total has about 49 joint labs. Just as an example, we have Helmholtz and Fraunhofer, and we have like Sino Spanish campus, and we have like these different like structures that exist. On top of that, we have tens of thousands of Chinese researchers that go to Europe every year. Within Marie Curie, we have about 400 Chinese researchers that have gotten the Marie Curie Fellowship going to Europe. Here in China, we also have European researchers, but not as many. It's probably around 1,000 to 2,000 when the biggest number of them were here before COVID. So like there's quite a bit of a flow of research activities going on, not to mention all the research collaboration that is happening sort of through short-term mobility or remotely. There's like co-publications between big Chinese institutions and European institutions that do not necessarily require people to be in the same place, but they're still publishing together and doing things together. it kind of boggles the mind. I was looking at the Elsevier database in February, looking at the number of publications in China. It's over 1 million publications a year, and tens of thousands of them are like jointly publishing with the Chinese, no, with the European institutions. So there's a lot of things going on underneath, let's say, the surface. As far as research collaboration goes, though, a lot of it has a tendency to end up in like this more political infrastructure that has been created, like a framework for research collaboration between China and Europe, simply because engaging with China is like a whole thing, right? And people would rather, also on the Chinese side, they would rather prefer to have like a nice framework around it. And the European Union, when I was here in 2016, we had then DG of Research and Innovation coming to China, Mr. Moedas, who set up a co-funding mechanism where we sort of selected 12 different flagship initiatives between the European Union and China, and there was like on Horizon 2020, and there was co-funding going on in that. So like both Chinese institutions and European institutions would apply for this funding and then work together. Currently, this has been cut down quite a bit. In Horizon Europe, so far, we only have 2 flagship initiatives. One of them is in food, agriculture, and biology, and the other one is in climate change and biodiversity. But there's like no stop negotiation going on all the time about this. And you might think that because like science is a thing that happens very freely, you might think that, you know, like this intergovernmental agreements are maybe not super significant. But in the case of China and Europe, it kind of is, because the Chinese institutions really look towards those priorities that are being set by their government, and they do care about this a lot. And as soon as there's a priority area defined and you want to collaborate, you can see that the whole Chinese research system is mobilized as a consequence to sort of engage with Europe. So it really, this part also really matters. And we in EURAXESS have been sort of on the periphery of those whole talks for many years, in particular because we believe that the mobility of researchers is sort of like one of the cornerstones of collaboration. And that's where EURAXESS can sort of contribute quite a bit. We have this network of individual researchers that are working on the ground here. So we are able to sort of share and explain the importance of that whole thing, which is something that has been implemented into, for example, the framework conditions of collaborations and other things like this.
And could I ask you, what is the tendency, if you know, of course, the tendency, for example, for Chinese researchers that are coming to Europe, do they tend to stay here, or they absorb all the knowledge that they need and then come to China and bring this information to the other researchers? Have you noticed some kind of tendencies in this point of view, or is it just my imagination, probably?
Well, yeah, there are definitely trends there. It's not super good to have like a really concrete overview of what's going on, but overall, number one, researchers overall, including Chinese researchers, are highly mobile. So like they are, well, most Chinese researchers will be mobile within China, but also internationally. So those of them that end up going to Europe to do a PhD or whatever frequently end up staying in Europe for a while, but maybe not always in the same country. They might go to another country, do another thing over there, etc., etc. But then, secondly, people end up also have like a hope that they can go back home. You know, like they really. Normally, this is the case with mobile work labor force anywhere. Mobile talents, they want to be able to go back home where their language is spoken and where the family is, etc. So, like Chinese researchers also really want to go home. The fact is though that up until 2010, they hardly ever did, because honestly, there was just not so much work for them to be done here in China. There was not a lot of opportunities for them. It would be a bit of a career mismatch to go back to China at that time. So we have statistics for Marie Curie, for example, that shows us that I forgot exactly when, I think 2007 or something, I think 95% of them, those that did the fellowship, would stick around in Europe and continue like working in European institutions, etc. Since, let's say, 2012 until now, the number of research opportunities in China has grown exponentially, and there's also like huge schemes to try to reattract Chinese researchers back to China. Because of this opportunity to actually do good science and go back to China, there are now much more Chinese scientists that come back. And I think the Marie Curie numbers are very skewed the other way around now. Like the Marie Curie fellows will go to Europe, but I think only like 15% of them stick around, will not go back to China eventually. That being said, I think that's very normal when you have two research areas that are both very good. You know what I mean? What you will have is like, instead of having like a one way, like before, Chinese only go to Europe, you will have brain circulation of people going back and forth, depending on where there's work, what kind of research they want to engage with, etc. The thing that is kind of more of a missed opportunity, in my opinion, is that while Chinese researchers go back and forth between Europe and China, for example, right now I can see a little bit of trend of Chinese researchers returning to Europe a bit, because there's been like that's just like the flow of things, how it is right now. While this thing sort of goes back and forth, the number of European researchers that have any insight into the Chinese system, or have like go and venture on and try to go into some of the excellent institutions that are here in China, are much, much, much fewer. So it is very much a Chinese game in that sense, that they come and go, and we hardly ever engage with what's going on here. And that is not very nice for Europe, I believe. I believe sincerely, no matter what you think about, let's say, the future of research collaboration or the political relationship and so on, while some excellent science is happening in China, if we would be, and maybe in some cases science that is better than in Europe, we would be absolutely amiss to not try to learn from that and absorb whatever is going on in that, and that's just not smart, and I feel like sometimes Europeans are a little bit like narrow-minded in this sense. They sort of like should like understand that it takes well, if you want to understand China and you want to understand how to collaborate with China in a not risky way, in a mutually beneficial way, you need people here that understand that, like that's crucial.
So, how can that change? How could we expand the horizons of the China and Europe connection?
Hard to say. I mean, like overall, I think we can start in Europe by trying to increase knowledge about China, like understanding better what's going on in China, how the Chinese system works, how Chinese system is motivated. I think it's really good fit to do this on a European level, because people in different parts of Europe are all doing they're all building their own research knowledge on the Chinese research system. But we should definitely compare our books and understand a little bit better how these things go and so on, and then inform our scientists in the European system, like how these things go. I think there's like, if you would be a Dutch scientist in Leiden University, let's say, and you would be interested in going to work in Tongji University in Shanghai, you would almost definitely be totally going into the unknown. You would not know anything about what's going to happen, what to expect, how to deal with it. There's no guidelines or best practices or nothing like that is there for you to sort of lean into. And that also means that people consistently end up doing the same mistakes, and they have to go through the same bad lessons when they're coming here and whatever. This is unnecessary. I think this is something we can try to fix a little bit. I think overall, when it comes to the research collaboration schemes, which is like a level beyond the individuals, I think in the near-time future, while the political situation is as it is, I think what we need is good infrastructure. We need on the European side to have like good channels and well-supported sort of like a mode of interchange. So we understand like if we want to collaborate with us, with China, it goes through these standards. It happens under these conditions, and it's going to be supported. And nobody, like people don't need to be climbing Mount Everest alone with no equipment or whatever. That's what I think we need to do, and that hardly exists at the moment. But I think it's something we might take a look at and try to consider if we can slowly start building, because China is going to stay significant science power until forever, probably. And we probably need to collaborate with them to tackle global challenges in science and so on. It's going to be hard to imagine that we can get away with not handle this or whatever. But they're also going to be very different from working with, let's say, Germany and France, or even between the United States and a European country. This is always going to be very different, and we need to sort of understand that and accept that. We sort of been just turning a blind eye to that for a while. We just think we can just deal with them. We can just go to Shanghai or whatever and deal with them as if you were setting up a collaboration between the Netherlands and Denmark or something. And that's going to be still open to people to do, but I think there are probably better ways to go about that, and I think the key to that is to have a good infrastructure in place, good policy, nice sort of support structure, let's say.
Halldor, I would like to ask you one more thing that regarding the system and ecosystem. For example, in China, there are definitely different situations apart from Europe. But still, for example, if we are focusing on collaboration as EURAXESS hubs, usually people are coming to people. In scope of Europe, it is the usual thing. National contact points are providing such services still on a personal level. Of course, this is not possible probably in China, but the information services are still working, and somehow we can inform this or that side on opportunities, on possible collaborations, and etc. But one another thing that I wanted to ask you about this production of highly skilled PhDs that are out there in the whole world and do not know what to do, because academia is producing so much of them that cannot digest actually afterwards. This is a problem that has many different solutions. So what is the case in China? Is it switching to industry or something else?
Well, there's a couple of questions going on here. Let's start with the beginning. You were talking about sort of how to engage with people on an individual level to sort of service them. And overall, this is exactly what we want to do and how we do things in EURAXESS. So we are not a project that is trying to set up institutional collaboration or whatever. We always work with individual scientists and researchers, etc. There's no service center for mobility in when people come to China. It just doesn't exist. When it comes to increasing the attractiveness of China as a research destination, well, that's something that the Chinese are responsible for, right? That's something that they should consider. And if they would like to do what we do in Europe and set up an infrastructure to sort of help people to come in, then we would obviously very welcome that. But on the other hand, even when the Chinese do not have that, it's very it just depends on where you go and which institution you end up with, how lucky you're going to be with the support that you're going to receive. So even without any sort of comprehensive infrastructure to receive people, my idea is that what we can do is that we can sort of set up a mutual support system of the people that are here. So, for example, when I set up a network of European researchers in China or European researchers in social sciences in China or whatever, that's a platform where you will have dozens of European scientists from every major institution in China. And even sometimes there's going to be questions that they have that even their own institution is not able to answer, but somebody else in the network might have found the solution before. So just the network effect on its own is extremely, extremely helpful. And it's an old and tried method when you're going into a new place, is to rely on your peers and people from the where you come from to try to figure out how to get successful. For example, a big question that people have here is I want to. The number one question of a researcher is can I get funding? And the Chinese Natural Science Foundation is the main funder of natural sciences here in China. All of these scientists are applying for this every year, these European scientists included, but some of them are asking, can we apply in English? And somebody say, no, it's not possible. My institution says it's not possible. But then there's like 3 other scientists that say, oh, actually, I was quite successful with it and it worked for me or whatever. And slowly we can get to the truth. And we find out together, actually, what's going on here is that you need to figure out if the evaluation panel has an English speaker on it or not. And that will help you to determine something like this. This is like knowledge that didn't exist. And even the Chinese might not have any standard answer to these questions themselves. But we as a group are able to sort of create knowledge and create and help each other. So I think most of the members of the network that come into it find it extremely helpful to enjoy something like this. Therefore, I think one of the big things that we can do is try to approach it a little bit like this. If we have researchers that are coming from Europe and want to come to China, they should be aware of the work that EURAXESS is doing. They should be aware of those networks that exist. Through the help of those networks, they could get really quickly integrated and embedded into a lot of things that sometimes take very long time for people to understand. And through something like this, it could be very helpful. I think there's a big question if we could maybe work more closely with the service centers in Europe when it comes to this. For example, the service centers in Europe, they frequently interact with Chinese researchers that are coming into that country, right? When they return back to China, I feel like there should be a way for sort of like a handover when these Chinese researchers can continue their ties with Europe by entering the China Hub network instead, and then they can now they're settling in China and they can do that. At the same, I know that the service centers of EURAXESS in Europe, they don't really handle local researchers, right? That's not really their job to do, but they're frequently affiliated with research councils or other sort of like research infrastructure in that country. So maybe if we would like to, we could also include the European researchers in this. Let's say that if you are a Polish researcher and you want to go to China, well, you know that we have set up a network of Polish researchers in China, and they can tell you a lot how to get settled here. Maybe you are working in agricultural sciences. Well, we have a group of people that are working in that, right? But I don't think that would be very easy for you in Poland to find out that this exists. But maybe there would be a way to sort of plug you better into this through some ways. Also, the other way around. When these researchers are interested in returning to Europe, we can be of great service to the European countries very easily. A lot of European countries are very interested and keen to reintegrate people and have different schemes for that or whatever. And if you guys are interested, it would be very possible to sort of like connect this with each other. So there's different ways here to offer services to these researchers on many different levels. I'm also really interested in one of the big things that these researchers are also interested in. They feel like that when they come here to China, one of the big challenges that they're facing is that they get lost, and in the sense that they will disappear from the academic discussions or academic circles that they're coming from in Europe. And this is a big hesitation point and makes them not want to come. They might get really embedded in the Chinese system, but like a decade down the line, they're absolutely disconnected with the European thing. I am really interested in finding ways to connect them back. Not necessarily bring them back, that's up to them, but connect them back, make them more visible in Europe, make people more aware of what they're doing, set up joint meetings, set up joint panels, do things where people can sort of understand who is who. I think there's a lot of opportunities in this. So this is the first thing. The second thing you were talking about is about intersectoral mobility. And that's a huge challenge for Europe, especially some parts of Europe where people are wondering sort of how academia can absorb all the PhDs that are being produced. Honestly, personally, and this is my personal opinion, I don't necessarily think that academia is supposed to be absorbing all research. Research happens in academia, but it also happens in a lot of different places, and we need trained researchers in a lot of different parts of society. And therefore, we have intersectoral mobility, where we try to figure out how we can go back and forth. It's a bit of a one-way street, isn't it? If you leave academia, you're probably not going back. That's the whole problem. I know that EURAXESS and the European Union has been sort of dealing with this question. One of the things that people do if they are keen on staying in academia and they're not interested in industry, they might look into academia elsewhere in the world, right? So we have PhD students and postdocs, etc., that come here to China just looking for opportunities. In particular, it's a great opportunity in the sense that a lot of the times there's large research infrastructure here in China that the people might get access to and start working with really early, and it's kind of reserved for more senior people in Europe or whatever. So this is exciting, like there's this hardware and equipment and money and things that people can get into. So we have like some of the spillovers maybe going to be ending up here. It's very much to be expected. That being said, there's also I don't know how many, but like millions of PhDs in China. So they're not really lacking people with doctoral education in that sense. Although, of course, everybody can benefit from a diverse like research staff. Here in China, I think it's less of a question. I don't really hear people talk about the intersectoral mobility to the same extent as we talk about it in Europe. And I think mostly it's because the culture here is very practical in the sense that almost nobody will embark upon this journey of becoming an academic researcher unless they have a great plan. They understand where they're going to be getting the postdoc afterward or whatever. It's or if they're interested in getting involved in industry, this is also something that they're planning for really, really early. I hear this from the European professors that are working closely with training these researchers here. They are like these people already have in mind, like, I want to work with as a research assistant in this laboratory so I can build up my CV to go to this one and whatever. And then they might want to say, I want to end up in Alibaba or something, to work in company. Or they're thinking, I want to become like a postdoc here and there and so on. So I sometimes feel like it's a less of people not rolling the dice as much as they do in Europe.
Like no way to integrate career advisors. They already know everything what they need.
Well, yes. I mean, or that tend to lean on mentors. There's these people and that are like the supervisor and so on that really sort of like tell them, and they're also just like oh, this is not going to work. Don't even try it. And and people accept that. And in Europe, people frequently do not accept that, and which is also a huge benefit. But it also means that people are going to be playing a bit of a lottery sometimes.
So just to have a sum up, what would you advise for the researchers who are thinking about exploring new markets, for example?
New market? You mean like new places or new?
Yes.
In this case, I think the way, and maybe it applies also more widely, I think people should look into finding somebody that is already doing it. That's how you do it, and that's also something you should consider whatever you're going to be doing. Look at somebody that is already doing this and try to talk to them and share their insights. If you're going into a new industry, if you're going into a new part of your career, if you're gonna change roles or whatever, start there. Talk to other peoples that have done this before, or if you want to do a Marie Curie fellowship, talk to people that have gotten it. They will tell you exactly how that happened and what doesn't work. When you're coming to China, you need to talk to researchers that have been to China, and that's where I would start. And if you need to find people like that, we would be very happy to connect you.
Very good. So communication is the key. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, of course.
Thank you.
As our next guest, let's meet Lena Kaufmann, a social anthropologist at the University of Zurich and China scholar specialized on translocal and global China migrations, rural-urban relations, agriculture, food, technology, knowledge, and digitalization.
Lena, can you tell us about cost actions and about CHERN specifically?
Yes, sure. So cost actions are a European-funded program, you can say, and it's actually networks, research networks that, COSTS stands for the European Cooperation in Science and Technology, and it's a funding organization for research networks. So with COST Actions is the name for these different research networks, and they apply to any field, any research field, and also not only to academia in the strict sense, but people who are, even working for some private enterprises or for think tanks or policymakers, they can join as well. So it's quite open and it's interdisciplinary. So this just in general. And so it's, EU funded, which also has an impact on which are the countries that are actually participating in these cost actions. So currently, there are 41 member states and one cooperating member. So it actually does go way beyond the 27 European Union member states, but still it's quite Europe-centric. And then these cost actions are interdisciplinary research networks that people can apply for from, it's conceived as a bottom-up initiative. If people have an interesting field or topic they would like to work on and to network with other people, like in the case of CERN that I will talk about in a second, people can apply for funding, for this network funding, and this is usually runs for 4 years. In the case of CERN, it has just been extended for another half a year. And then these networks, they give the possibility to do collaboration activities, like, for example, meeting of working groups or organizing workshops, also organizing short-term scientific missions where people can go and researchers can do like short-term scientific exchanges to work collaboratively on a joint topic. Then there are training schools and skills training also. And it's, what is maybe also important that it's for any type of career level. So from PhD student onwards up to professor emeritus, and also, like I said, some people who are not in academia are welcome to join as well. So for CERN, that abbreviation stands for the China in Europe Research Network, and that is mainly meant as a platform to exchange knowledge interdisciplinary about China's increasing presence in Europe. And both among academic, but also among non-academic communities. So some of the outcomes of these network conferences are also intended to feed into policy recommendations, for example. And so this network started to run in November 2019, and it's mainly based at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, and was conceived there by researchers there in Amsterdam and also from Bristol. So the two key persons in this field are Nana de Graaf and also Jeffrey Henderson. And there are currently more than 250 researchers from really different backgrounds in this network, also including a lot of Chinese people as well. Because becoming a member of a cost action doesn't look at your passport, but applies to where your professional affiliation is. So if you're affiliated to a European university, and then you can join these cost actions. And so they actually come also from more than 40 countries, based on their affiliation. Maybe even more countries if you would look at the actual passports of these people. And so you have in this network many of the key people really who work on China-Europe relations, but also some external guests like two advisors, I think, who come from China specifically, but also people who come from the US and contribute to this network to have a little bit a broader exchange and also to look over to other regions as well, and not just Europe and just China. So many of the people also do research in other regions and about other regions as well. And yeah, what I think is really great for me about this network is that it's interdisciplinary. So it's organized in 5 different working groups. And so if you're a member of CHERN, you should be a member of at least one working group, but you can also be a member of several working groups. Like, for example, CHERN has one working group that works on infrastructure development, then another one that works on high tech and innovation. I'm part of that group, for example. And then there is another group that works on financial investments and real estate. The 4th group works on public diplomacy, and then the 5th group, where I'm also an active member, works on labor and migration. And so these are some of the core topics that people in this network work on and contribute on and exchange. And so I also work in these fields.
So can you tell us a bit about the importance of the China-Europe relationship, especially within the CHERN framework?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I think that China-Europe relationship is, of course, extremely central in this framework of the CHERN action, but it also has to be seen in a wider, geopolitical field. I mean, especially as a, not to say counterpoint, but as another pole in this bipolar China-US relationship. And then what has been much debated in this work in CHERN, in this network, is what role should Europe take in this trade war, for example. And so this has been really, really important then to look at what is actually also happening on the ground in Europe, and also to find a dialogue between different countries. I mean, both EU countries and some non-EU countries, and to exchange experiences and positions, and also maybe to discuss whether there could be a joint approach, a joint European approach. I mean, in the European Parliament, I mean, this is also currently debated. So I think the network actually has very direct implications also for the information that is going then later into Brussels, for example, and into policy making.
So interesting. Can you tell us a little bit perhaps about the research connection between China and Europe? Is some of this research happening in China, only out of China? Is there a mix between European and Chinese researchers? I'm not sure if you have anything to add on that.
There is this necessity, of course, that we should keep up the dialogue, that we should continue to work with Chinese colleagues and to exchange. I mean, it's very important, of course, especially also for China researchers. And on the other hand, there is this fear of, on the one hand, of unwanted maybe technology or knowledge flows to China, and on the other hand, also some debates around academic freedom. So this is a key topic at the moment that is debated, and my sense is that people don't have a definite answer for this yet, about how we should actually deal with this problem.
What is there personally for you that you gain from this network?
So for me personally, I have been part of 2 working groups in CHERN, like the one on high tech and innovation, and then the one on labor migration. And what really enabled this for me to do is to grow my network, and especially beyond the boundaries of my discipline. So to get in touch with with people with very different backgrounds and to hear their opinions on working on similar topic. I mean, this has been extremely enriching for me. And yeah, like meeting people from, for example, political science, practitioners in the field, or also from consultancies or think tanks.
Lena, thank you so much for providing your unique perspective on the China-Europe relationship. It's really been a pleasure to hear from you and to learn from you.
Thank you for having me here.
Meet our next guest, Slaven Misljencevic, who works as Policy Officer in the Directorate-General for Research and Innovation of the European Commission, more specifically in the unit R&I Actors and Research Careers. He is responsible for several initiatives that contribute to the realization of a European labor market for researchers, notably the development of ReSaver, Pan-European Occupational Pension Fund, ERA Hubs, European Year of Use, and EURAXESS. Moreover, he is responsible for the ongoing work in tackling R&I foreign interference. Welcome, Slaven.
So, Slaven, thank you very much for joining us. And today we have a huge topic on R&I cooperation between the countries and continents. And we will cover today a big topic on China. And first of all, my questions are, so what are concerns of the European Commission that are on the agenda now?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Now, if we look at the development of new technologies, for example, such as those related to generative AI, advanced manufacturing, biotech, quantum, etc., we see that over the years they have become increasingly complex to develop, as they require more financial resources and often a combination of very specific human resources. And it can be quite challenging to find all these financial and human resources within the borders of a single country. And therefore, it is clear that international collaboration is crucial, both within Europe and between EU and non-EU countries. And that's why over the past decades, we have, in close cooperation with the member states and the stakeholders, been working on the European research area, which is basically a single borderless market for research, innovation, and technology across Europe. Now, in case of both intra-EU and extra-EU collaboration, this collaboration is usually resulting in an exchange of knowledge and staff. And we are observing that both researchers and higher education institutions and research performing organizations are becoming increasingly international. I would say that this openness and collaboration has greatly contributed to their success. However, over the past years, we have also observed an increased number of foreign interference cases in the EU. And the current geopolitical context has not improved the situation. And when we see foreign interference as a threat to international cooperation, it is clear that we have to do something about it, because eventually this is affecting international cooperation, which is something that is in the DNA of our researchers and our R&I institutions. Now, the Commission defines foreign interference as activities that are carried out by or on behalf of a foreign actor, which are coercive, covert, deceptive, or corrupting, and are contrary to EU's sovereignty, values, and interests. And there are a variety of fictive examples I sometimes use to illustrate what this could be. For example, think of a research leader which is collaborating with a foreign actor and is pressured into restricting or canceling lectures, workshops, conferences, or projects on a specific topic. You can also think of a foreign state-sponsored hacker group that is running a phishing campaign on students and staff of a university, for example, in order to harvest their accounts and gain access to publications, data, and code. You can also think of a tech transfer officer that is recruited by a foreign actor and is coerced or blackmailed in order to gain access to, for example, confidential research and intellectual property rights. And what is also clear that foreign actors deploy a variety of tactics as part of their foreign interference campaigns. These tactics can be political pressure, financial support, exploiting people, digital intrusions, and spreading disinformation. Moreover, when we talk about foreign interference threats, we also often call them multidimensional threats that combine both coercive and subversive measures, that use both conventional and unconventional tools and tactics, and that are designed to be difficult to detect or attribute. Moreover, these threats target critical vulnerabilities and extend across all research activities, scientific domains, research outputs, and individuals at the organizations. And so, over the past years, the Commission, together with the Member States and stakeholders, has made quite some progress. Back in January 2022, the Commission published a staff working document on tackling RNI for interference that aims to support universities and its researchers to protect fundamental values by safeguarding academic freedom, integrity, and institutional autonomy, but also to protect key research findings and intellectual assets. This document, which I would recommend most of the listeners to read, provides clear recommendations regarding what could be done to raise awareness about the issue. It lists possibilities about preventive measures, and it explains potential approaches how to respond when foreign interference is observed in an institution. Indeed, this is also entirely on voluntary basis. The Commission is also collaborating in the context of G7 with like-minded partners, and this has resulted in the publication of Research Compact in 2021 and the G7 publication on the common values and principles on research security, adopted in 2022. Last year, the Commission also organized a set of mutual learning exercises with the member states on this topic. And recently, on the 24th of January 2024, the Commission adopted a proposal for a Council recommendation on research security, something that is currently under discussion in the Council of the European Union. Finally, we are currently working on setting up a one-stop shop on tackling RNI foreign interference that will support both individual researchers and their institutions to navigate through this rather complex topic.
So, could you describe the state of play with the EU-China relationships at the moment?
Well, what I just explained and our approach to foreign interference and research security more in general is entirely state agnostic. Moreover, the EU-China relationships go beyond RNI. However, if we focus on the RNI dimension and in accordance with the EU's global approach to research and innovation, the EU has developed an increasingly nuanced and, I would say, transactional approach towards engagement with China in research and innovation. China remains a cooperation partner the EU wants to engage with, especially to tackle global challenges. And for example, during the EU-China high-level dialogue on research and innovation in January 21, both sides agreed to launch a new flagship initiative on climate change and biodiversity. And this cooperation also continues in the framework of the flagship on food, agriculture, and biotechnology that started in 2013. Nevertheless, in line with the global approach, cooperation between European and Chinese researchers and entities on the Horizon Europe, the European Union's multi-annual framework program for research innovation, is encouraged mainly under food, agriculture, biotech, climate change, and biodiversity flagships. Nevertheless, our approach remains based on a positive agenda of partnerships, coupled with a constructive management of differences.
Thank you. So, what could be also your tips and tricks and some peculiarities that should be taken into consideration by researchers that plan to cooperate with Chinese research organizations or higher educational institutions?
Well, first of all, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Each cooperation is different, and in most cases, there are no security risks. Moreover, security is a collaborative challenge. It is not just up to individual researchers, but also up to institutions where they are working and the local, national, and EU level competent authorities to support our researchers. So, depending on the type of collaboration, in some cases, the researcher should be aware of export control legislation or the foreign direct investment screening. In some cases, due diligence should be performed, and relevant individuals, both at the institutional and also national level, should be contacted to either inform them about potential collaboration or simply to request guidance. It is important that when performing due diligence, all necessary information is gathered in order to assess potential risks with regard to security, values, or reputation. Also, depending on kind of collaboration, it is in some cases more important to carefully negotiate partnership agreements. For example, to ensure transparent delineation of responsibilities and how data will be handled. There should be also clear arrangements regarding financial commitments, intellectual property rights, and open science. And moreover, when the agreement is ongoing, it is crucial to monitor its implementation while focusing on the issues related to potential foreign interference. And at the end, it is important to assess the outcomes of the collaboration and draw lessons for future engagement. Now, what I want to stress here is individual researchers are not alone. Over the past years, we have observed an increased number of support structures being developed at national, local, and institutional level that have the aim to support individual researchers to navigate through this complex topic by providing them tailored and concrete guidance. It is crucial that researchers feel confident navigating this increasingly complex international environment.
Thank you very much, Slaven, for shaping this episode. I think this information would be necessary and even useful for those researchers who would like to take next step in their career and go globally.
Thank you for listening to this episode of EURAXESS Smart Talks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and can't wait to share more with you next time.
You can follow us and find more episodes on the EURAXESS portal or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode was prepared by audio engineer Pavle Drašković, outreach manager Daria Aksionova, production manager Lea Nerenberg, editors Isar Per and Miroslav Trojanovic.
This episode is published under the Creative Commons CC BY license. Thanks for listening.